This story follows a black single father, once a beloved special education teacher, now working as a janitor in a biotech empire. When he calms a silent, emotionally distant girl in the middle of a corporate lobby with nothing but soap bubbles, he unknowingly awakens a hidden war between human connection and brand image. What unfolds is a quiet revolution where presence, not perfection, rebuilds what power forgot how to hold. "You need to step back, sir," she bites. The security guard's voice cracked through the sleek marble lobby of Hopewell Biotech, like a whip meant to cut away sympathy. Malik Jefferson stopped mid-mop. He wasn't staring at the 5 panicked executives clustered by the glass sculpture. He was staring at her, a girl no older than 10, knees pulled to her chest, rocking rhythmically on the floor as if the entire world had tilted. Her white dress was perfectly ironed. Her expression wasn't. It was vacant, except for her eyes. Her eyes darted wild and scared, like a trapped bird trying to break through invisible walls. "She's having another episode," one woman muttered into her phone. Where the hell is the nanny? Malik didn't move toward her. He didn't speak to the executives. He just whispered, "May I?" and gestured toward the child. The security guard blocked him with an arm. "That's Alina Hopewell," he hissed. "CEO's daughter. Don't get involved. Last guy who tried got fired before his mop dried." But Malik wasn't listening. Not to him. Not to the suits. Not to the red blinking security camera above. He was listening to something else. The soft rhythm of the girl's fingers tapping the floor. The quickened breath every time someone stepped too close. The language of trauma. A language he had once taught teachers to hear. "I'm not going to touch her," he said low and steady. "Just sitting." And so he did. Right there on the cold marble, still wearing his gray janitor uniform and beaten-up boots. Slowly, he reached into his supply cart, grabbed a plastic bottle of dish soap, dipped his hand into mop water, and began to blow bubbles. 1, 2, 3. The room froze. The executives exchanged confused looks. The guard scoffed. But Alina stopped rocking. Her humming dimmed. Her eyes locked onto the shimmering bubbles floating gently upward. Some popped immediately. Others hovered like secrets refusing to land. Malik didn't speak to her. Didn't praise or prod. He just kept blowing. He knew what it meant to be watched like a problem. He knew what silence felt like when it wasn't peaceful, but protective. Unbeknownst to him, from the mezzanine above, a woman stood watching. Vivian Hopewell, CEO of Hopewell Biotech, power-suited, high-heeled, icy. Her expression didn't change, but her breath did. Her daughter, her mystery, her heartbreak was still. And this janitor. This man the board wouldn't let through the front entrance for interviews. He had accomplished in 30 seconds what therapists and specialists with 6-figure invoices hadn't in 2 years. She took the elevator down. The moment the doors opened, silence splintered. "Mr. Jefferson," she said sharply. Malik rose slowly. "Ma'am, I'd like to speak with you. Now, upstairs." He glanced at the girl, still staring at the last bubble now drifting near the ceiling. I wasn't asking." Vivian turned without waiting. Her heels clicked like punctuation. The security guard raised his eyebrows as Malik followed. Her office smelled like filtered air and expensive decisions. She closed the door with a quiet thud. "Who taught you that?" she asked, after a long pause. Malik looked at her directly. "My daughter. And my students. I used to teach special ed. Before things changed." Vivian folded her arms tightly, voice clipped. "My daughter hasn't responded to anyone in 2 years. No talking, no touching. Not to me. Not to world-class experts flown in from Zurich or Stanford. You blew soap bubbles, and she stopped shaking." Malik didn't answer. "I want you to work with her," she said. He blinked. "I'm a janitor. I can change that. I don't want a title. I want terms. If I do this, I don't work for you. I work with her. No cameras, no one watching behind mirrors. And if you so much as try to turn this into a publicity stunt..." She raised one manicured brow. "You're negotiating. I'm protecting her," he replied. Something shifted in her eyes, Not soft, but unsettled. Guilt. No. Something colder. Maybe grief and armor. She has the best care money can buy, she said almost defensively. Maybe that's the problem. She said nothing for a full beat, then nodded. I'll have my assistant contact you. He turned to leave, then paused. What color were those bubbles? She asked suddenly. Malik looked back over his shoulder. Blue, he said softly. Always start with blue. It calms the chaos. And with that, he left. What neither of them knew, what no one watching from the security cameras dared to understand, was that this wasn't just a man blowing bubbles. This was a man stepping into a firestorm of optics image control and racial perception. And the fire hadn't even started yet. The fire hadn't even started yet. But in the penthouse of Hopewell Tower, the temperature was already rising. Do you even realize what you've done? Greg Miles's voice sliced through the air like glass. He stood in Vivian Hopewell's office the next morning, charcoal suit sharp as his tone tablet in hand. He swiped and turned the screen toward her footage screenshots angles of Malik Jefferson sitting cross-legged blowing soap bubbles in full janitor uniform. This is viral bait, he said. The board will spin out if this leaks before we're ready. A man like him with no license, no clearance. He calmed her. Vivian interrupted, not looking up from her coffee. That's not the point. Then, what is Greg leaned in voice lower. You're a white CEO. He's a black janitor. She's your daughter. Silent, vulnerable, visibly distressed. And there he is, kneeling beside her, while security stood frozen. The narrative writes itself, Vivian. Do you want people to believe you've lost control of your family, your image, your brand? Vivian's eyes flicked up, glacier sharp. Alina is not a brand. Greg didn't blink. To the market she is. And right now, she's dangerous. She didn't reply. Because deep down she knew what he meant. Her daughter had always been a ghost in photos, a mystery in interviews. For years, that silence had been manageable. Marketable even. A mother balancing global leadership with the challenge of raising a neurodivergent child. It had sympathy. It had polish. But what if the silence broke? And what if the one person who helped wasn't part of the system? Later that evening, Malik stood outside the penthouse door, holding his daughter, Amaya's hand. She was 10, bright-eyed with her mother's calm presence and her father's quiet courage. He rang the bell. It chimed like a piano that had forgotten how to play warmth. Vivian opened it herself. No assistant, no security. She wore a charcoal sweater, no makeup hair pulled back. Human for once. You brought your daughter, she noted. She's part of this, Malik replied simply. Just like I told you. No performance, no script. Inside, Amaya wandered toward the corner of the pristine living room. Do rich people live in museums? She asked under her breath. Vivian half smiled. Only the ones who forgot what rooms are for. Malik knelt beside Amaya. Remember the rule, he whispered. Amaya nodded. Let silence talk first. Alina was in her room. Malik didn't knock. He just walked in and sat near the window. She didn't turn. He pulled out a small notebook and began sketching a sun, a tree, a little girl holding a bubble. After a minute, he set it down. Waited. 1 beat. 2. Then a small sound, feet padding toward him. Alina picked up the paper, stared, then sat beside him. No words, no glance. Just presence. Just breath. From the hallway, Vivian watched arms cross, this time not in defense, but self-restraint. Back in the living room, Amaya had quietly begun sketching her own page. 3 figures under a blue sky. Vivian sat across from her. That's you, she asked. Amaya nodded. That's my dad, and that's her. Why blue? It's the safest color. My mom used to say blue is what quiet looks like. Vivian blinked, something catching in her chest. Malik emerged from Alina's room and walked past her. She sat beside me. Vivian whispered, She hasn't sat beside anyone in over a year. Then maybe don't make her stand in rooms she doesn't recognize, he said. They moved into the kitchen. Vivian poured water from the sink herself. No glassware lined up like soldiers, no butler in waiting. "I've done everything for her," she said softly. "Speech therapy, occupational, behavioral. We flew in a specialist from Sweden who charged more than some people make in a year." "Yeah," Malik nodded. "You hired people to talk to her. But did anyone ever listen?" Vivian clenched her jaw. "I listen. Do you kneel?" That stopped her. "She used to laugh," Vivian said after a pause. "Color things. Call strawberries red, the sky pink, everything. And then one day—" She stopped. "Fever. Vaccine. Doctor said it was a coincidence. But I still wonder, was it me? Did I miss something?" Malik shook his head. "All parents ask that, even when the answer's no." Amaya wandered back in, holding a sketch for Alina. "Only if she wants it," she said. Vivian looked at Malik. "Would dinner help?" He nodded. "At your table. No staff, no menus. Just invitation." She looked down at the child's drawing. A bubble hovered over all three figures. "Do you think she remembers me at all?" "She doesn't forget," Malik said gently. "She just hasn't found a reason to trust the version of you that never sits down." Vivian exhaled, long and shaky. "Then next Friday. Come. But she doesn't eat shellfish." Malik smiled. "Neither do we." As they left, Amaya skipped ahead. Malik lingered in the doorway. Vivian picked up the drawing once more. "What color is she now?" she asked softly. Malik looked back. Still blue. She nodded slowly. "But I think," he added before the door clicked shut, "she's learning how to mix." And upstairs, alone with a single crayon in hand, Alina began tracing soft lines on a page she hadn't touched in months. Circles, stars. And for the first time in nearly 2 years, a streak of light orange in the corner. Not bold, but present, waiting. And down the hall, Vivian Hopewell didn't sleep. She sat beside the unopened therapy reports. This wasn't data. This wasn't diagnosis. This was presence. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure her title knew what to do with that. The unopened therapy reports lay untouched beside her, but Vivian didn't reach for them. She stared out the window instead, watching the city bleed amber into navy. In all her years of building Hopewell Biotech, she'd conquered stock crashes, patent wars, and pharmaceutical smears, but none of it had prepared her for a streak of light orange on her daughter's sketchpad. It wasn't a breakthrough, not clinically, but emotionally, it cracked something open, and she didn't know whether to fear it or follow it. Friday came quickly. Vivian stood barefoot in the kitchen, no suit, no heels, just a soft navy blouse and jeans that hadn't seen daylight in years. Her staff had been dismissed for the evening. The dining table had been replaced with a smaller round setup in the living room, lit by a single warm lamp. No menus, no servers, just bowls of simple food, soft textures, muted flavors, carefully planned to avoid triggers. Vivian's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't check it. The doorbell rang. Malik arrived carrying a folded picnic blanket, a thermos of warm lentil stew, and a paper bag of grapes and plain crackers. Amaya skipped in behind him, crayon pouch in hand. Vivian opened the door herself. She looked different. Not smaller, but somehow quieter. "You brought food?" she asked. "For the room," Malik replied. "It needs something alive." Vivian hesitated, then smiled. "I suppose that includes us tonight." Alina sat curled in the corner of her room, knees tucked under her chin, arms wrapped tight. But her eyes followed Amaya's every movement as she carefully unrolled the crayon pouch and placed a blank pad on the floor between them. Neither of the girls spoke. Vivian stood at the doorway, but didn't cross the threshold. She remembered Malik's condition, no observation. But something inside her made her stay anyway, just close enough to witness, but far enough not to interrupt. Malik sat gently across from the girls and turned on a small Bluetooth speaker. Debussy floated out, low, dreamy calm, like breath. He placed a single blue crayon on the edge of the pad, closer to Alina's side. She didn't reach for it. Yet. Amaya began to draw. A tree. A girl under it. Then a dog. Then a bubble. No words. No glances, just movement. Alina's fingers twitched. She leaned forward. 1 inch. Then 2. And finally she picked up the blue crayon. Vivian's hand flew to her mouth. Alina drew a single circle. Then another. Then a faint smile on the figure Amaya had sketched. Then she picked up the green crayon. And just like that, they were drawing together. Malik leaned slightly toward Vivian and whispered, "This is what safety looks like. It doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with stillness." Vivian swallowed hard. "Why doesn't she talk to me?" she asked, barely audible. "Because you don't sit on the floor," he replied. An hour passed like a dream. Alina accepted a grape from Amaya's hand. She didn't flinch. She didn't retreat. She just chewed slowly and kept drawing. Amaya beamed. "She likes me," she whispered. "She chose you," Malik replied, voice thick. The sketchpad now held 3 stick figures. One had curly hair. One wore glasses. One had a red dress. "That's me," Amaya pointed. "That's Daddy. And that's your mom." Alina didn't say anything, but she colored the red dress a shade deeper. Vivian stepped forward, knees nearly buckling. "That used to be my favorite color," she said. Alina paused, then whispered, barely a breath but audible, "Still is." Vivian sank to the edge of the bed, trembling. Later that night, after Amaya had drifted off on the guest bed, and Alina curled up in her corner, cradling the blue crayon, like a talisman, Malik washed dishes at the sink. Vivian joined him, drying silently. Her hands trembled slightly. "She called it red," she said. "She remembered it," Malik corrected. "She didn't label it." "Big difference." Vivian nodded, absorbing the distinction. Then she asked almost reluctantly, "You think I missed all of this because I didn't sit on the floor?" Malik turned, meeting her eyes. "I think you've been standing so long you forgot how to kneel." Vivian exhaled a small dry laugh. "That's poetic." "It's also true." A beat passed in silence. Vivian looked at the drawing left on the counter. 3 figures, 1 bubble above them, the word "safe" scrawled underneath. "I used to think love was performance," she whispered. "Straight A's, clean presentations, perfect posture. But that little girl in the corner. She taught me something without saying a word." Malik turned off the tap. "Children don't care who you are, only how you show up." "Do you think this connection," she asked, struggling to find the word, "will hold?" Malik nodded slowly. "It'll hold if you let her lead." As he packed up to leave, Alina stirred. "Dinner." Again she whispered. Vivian froze. Her hand covered her mouth. Malik turned slowly. "Next Friday," Amaya answered without hesitation. Alina smiled, a real one, not traced or mimicked. And for the first time in years, the penthouse didn't feel like a high-security exhibit. It felt like a home that had forgotten how to breathe, and just now remembered. The smile still lingered in the corners of Alina's mouth as Malik closed the door behind him. For a single fragile night, it felt like they had rewritten the rules of her silence, not by force, not by therapy, but by presence. But smiles in a world obsessed with optics rarely go unpunished. By 7:00 a.m., the next morning, a tabloid headline was already circulating. From lab coats to lunch dates. Hopewell CEO's late-night sessions with janitor raise eyebrows. It was paired with a blurry photo, Malik's hand brushing against Vivian's on the countertop. Alina barely visible in the background, crayons scattered between them like scandal. By 8:15, Greg Miles stormed into Vivian's office without knocking. "This is exactly what I warned you about," he said, tablet screen glowing with comment, threads, speculation videos, and internal investor emails. "You just gifted them an entire week's worth of content." Vivian closed the tab quietly and looked up. She spoke. Greg stared. "What she asked for dinner again," she said. "First full sentence in 2 years." "That's great," Greg snapped. "But the world doesn't care. They see a billionaire CEO inviting a janitor into her home, into her daughter's life, and into whatever that picture looks like." He pointed at the screen. You've shattered protocol, Vivian. No clearance, no liability waivers. This is a PR catastrophe. She stood up. It's not about PR anymore. It is, if you want to keep your job. Vivian didn't reply. Because beneath all the firestorm Greg had unleashed, something deeper had shifted. She wasn't fighting to stay at the top of the tower anymore. She was fighting to stay inside her daughter's world. But Greg wasn't finished. You don't know who he is. No resume, no credentials, no degrees we can vet. A single black father with no corporate history, and say what you're trying not to say. Vivian cut in. Greg froze. You're not afraid of his lack of credentials. You're afraid of his presence, because he did something your experts couldn't. And he didn't need a title to do it. He's a liability, Greg said flatly. If you want to salvage this, you'll suspend contact. Quietly. Let it blow over. Vivian turned her gaze to the window, the city glinting below. Alina was humming now. That wasn't noise. That was healing. Let me be clear, Greg said coldly. If you don't put this out, he's gone. And your board will start asking if you should be next. That evening, Malik's phone buzzed. Access to Building 14. Suspended pending review. Hopewell Management. He read it 3 times, then turned to Amaya, who was laying out plates for their usual Friday visit. We're not going tonight, Bug. She looked up, eyes dimming. Why? He hesitated. Sometimes, grown-ups build walls when they're scared. But what if she thinks we stopped caring? Malik didn't answer. He couldn't. Across the city, Alina sat silently at her window again. No sketchpad, no crayons, no hum. Just her knees tucked back to her chest, head bowed. Vivian stood beside her, unsure of what to do with her hands, her voice, her fear. I didn't stop him, she whispered. But I didn't fight hard enough either. No response. Vivian sat down on the floor, slowly, knees aching, pride heavier than ever. She slid a blank page toward her daughter and whispered, Can I draw with you? Nothing. I thought protecting the company would protect you, she said. But maybe I was protecting the wrong thing. Alina blinked once, then reached for a black crayon. She began to draw 3 figures, 2 standing, 1 missing. Vivian's hand went to her chest. I'll fix this, she whispered, even if it cost me everything. The next morning, she stood outside a modest apartment building in Harlem, wind whipping her coat open. She knocked. The door opened to Amaya's stunned expression. Miss Vivian Malik appeared behind her eyebrows raised. I didn't expect to see you here, he said carefully. They suspended your access, she said breathlessly. Greg's threatening to terminate your contract. I told them I'd walk if they touched you again. Malik stared. You'd really risk your title for this? She nodded. I already risked losing her once. I won't do it again. Amaya tugged at her sleeve. She didn't eat last night, did she? Vivian shook her head. Her voice cracked. Not a bite. Then maybe Amaya whispered she's waiting for us. That night, no cameras followed them. No press cars tailed them. Malik brought a thermos of soup. Amaya held a glitter blue crayon set. Vivian opened the door, no hesitation, no barrier. Alina was still in the corner, crayon, in hand unmoving. Hey, Bluebird, Malik said softly, kneeling nearby. Miss us. Her head lifted. 1 blink, then 2. Malik unscrewed the thermos. The scent of tomato soup filled the room. Nothing fancy, he said. Just warmth. Amaya sat beside her. We brought something, if you still want to draw. She held out a single crayon, glitter blue. Alina took it. She didn't say a word, but she began to draw. A shaky circle, a soft star. And then she whispered, Dinner again. Please. Vivian leaned against the doorframe, tears streaming silently. Malik didn't smile. He just nodded. Then, let's start building something stronger. No more walls, Vivian whispered. Malik looked at her. Only doors left open. Only doors left open. Vivian repeated those words under her breath the next morning, standing in her kitchen as sunlight spilled over the marble counters. But the warmth didn't last long. That afternoon, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived, its gold seal, catching the light like a warning shot. It was from the Superior Court of New York. Inside, a petition for emergency custody of Alina Hopewell, filed by Spencer Lane, Alina's biological father, the same man who hadn't seen her since she was 2 years old. Vivian's hands trembled as she read through the pages. Claims of maternal instability, exposure to non-professional care environments, subject placing child in contact with uncredentialed individuals. One line stood out like blood: on Snow, janitorial worker of undisclosed background, currently acting in therapeutic capacity without oversight. She read it twice, then a third time. He was going after Malik, and if she didn't stop it now, he might win. Vivian drove to Malik's apartment without calling. He answered in sweatpants and socks, soup-stained dish towel still over his shoulder. "She's in her room," Vivian blurted. "Drawing, humming, eating again." "But he's back. Spencer filed for custody. And he's using you to do it." Malik didn't flinch. "Of course he is. He's connected," Vivian said. "His attorney clerked for the judge. He knows how to play this system." He crossed his arms. "Do you want me to step back?" Vivian shook her head instantly. "No. Never." "Then we fight," Malik said simply. The courtroom was cold and sterile, the scent of fear masked only by burnt coffee and polished leather. Alina sat quietly beside Amaya in the gallery, a sketchpad in her lap. She wore a blue ribbon in her hair. Becca held her hand like it was a lifeline. Vivian stood tall at the front. No designer suit, no heels, just quiet resolve and a navy blazer she'd pulled from the back of her closet. Her hair was tied loosely. Her eyes were calm but fierce. Spencer sat across from her, flanked by attorneys, smugness etched deep into every expression. He hadn't come to reclaim a daughter. He'd come to reclaim control. "Your Honor." His lead counsel began rising like the beginning of a show. "Ms. Hopewell's judgment has clearly deteriorated. She has exposed a psychologically vulnerable child to an unlicensed, unscreened janitorial employee repeatedly and unsupervised. We have photo evidence, social media speculation, and testimony ready." A ripple of laughter echoed from the gallery when the term crayon therapy was mentioned. Vivian didn't move. Then her lawyer rose. "Your Honor, the child in question has not spoken in 2 years. Since interacting with Mr. Malik Jefferson, she has voluntarily spoken drawn and formed a peer relationship with another child. She eats, she hums, she asks questions. There are no labels for that kind of progress, but there is truth, and the man responsible for that progress is here today." The judge nodded slowly. "Mr. Jefferson, you may speak." Malik stood, the courtroom silenced like a breath being held. "I taught special education for 11 years," he began, "until my wife passed. After that, I couldn't stay in the classroom. Every kid I helped reminded me of the one person I couldn't save. So I mopped floors, because it was quiet, because no one expected anything from me anymore." He looked over at Alina. She blinked at him slowly. "And then I met her, and she didn't ask me to fix her. She asked me to stay, not with words but with stillness, with breath, with a crayon." He turned to Spencer. "You say I'm unqualified. Maybe. But when's the last time she looked you in the eye?" Spencer shifted uncomfortably. Malik turned back to the judge. "I didn't diagnose her. I didn't lecture her. I just sat on the floor. I matched her silence with mine until she trusted that I wouldn't leave." He paused. "That's not therapy. That's presence. And it's the only reason she calls Blue safe. Because Blue meant I stayed." He stepped back. Then, before the judge could respond, Amaya stood up, walked to the bench. The room gasped. The judge blinked. "Young lady, can I show something?" He nodded. She held up Alina's drawing, 3 stick figures, holding hands under a sky full of stars. One figure wore glasses. One had curly hair. One had a red dress. A single word written in shaky handwriting floated above them. "Blue." "This is Alina's family," Amaya said softly. She doesn't talk a lot, but she says blue means safe. And she says, we're blue. Silence. Then the judge exhaled slowly and nodded. Effective immediately custody of Alina Hopewell remains with her mother, Vivian Hopewell. Further action will require psychological review and ongoing family therapy. Mr. Jefferson may continue to participate with full transparency. Gasps, flashes, whispers. Alina turned toward Vivian and whispered just loud enough for the front row to hear. Stay blue. Vivian's voice cracked as she nodded, eyes shining. Always. Outside the chaos erupted reporters' cameras' questions. Miss Hopewell, are you in a relationship with the janitor? One shouted. Vivian paused, looked at Malik, then said calmly and clearly, I'm in a relationship with the truth, and he's been living it far longer than I have. Malik didn't reply. He didn't need to, because between them stood a little girl with a blue ribbon, a drawing in her hand, and a future no courtroom could steal. And somewhere far from the cameras, her voice would whisper one more word later that night, as she added yellow to her next drawing. Hope. Hope. That was the last word Alina whispered before sleep that night, curled beside Amaya in the soft corner of the guest room at Malik's apartment. A paper still damp with watercolor rested on the windowsill, the yellow blending gently into streaks of soft blue. It wasn't perfect, but it was present. And that presence, unfiltered, unbranded, had become something far bigger than any courtroom could define. 1 week later, the plans were spread out across the old wooden table in Vivian's kitchen, the same table where she once signed NDAs and crisis response playbooks. But this morning, no one wore suits. No one carried clipboards. Just Vivian, Malik, and a folded sketch of a building not yet born. You're serious about this? Malik asked, fingertips grazing the paper. The design was simple: open rooms, soundproof corners, textured walls mapped by color instead of labels. Vivian didn't blink. You once said Alina didn't need perfection, just presence. So I want to build a place that reflects that. He studied the floor plan again. There were no therapy chairs, no cold glass walls, just safe corners, soft lighting, and one room at the center marked in bold, the listening room. Malik was silent for a long moment. I used to sketch classrooms like this, years ago, when I still believed the system could change. Do you believe it again? She asked. I believe in her, he said. That's a start. Vivian slid the paperwork across. Help me build it. Malik leaned back. You're asking a janitor to design a therapy center. I'm asking a father who listens before he speaks, she said. That's rarer than any degree on my payroll. They broke ground inside an abandoned old warehouse, a building once used for inventory overflow. It smelled of rust and history. But that didn't stop them. Becca came every weekend to paint stars on the walls. Amaya wrote quotes from Alina in crayon above the windows. And Alina. She painted only in blue, at first shy, hesitant. But one afternoon she added a streak of yellow, then another, a curved line, a rising arch. What's that? Malik asked gently. Alina whispered sun. He swallowed hard. Yeah, baby girl. Exactly that. Vivian arrived in sneakers, no assistant in sight, her hair tied in a messy ponytail. She spent evenings sanding benches, choosing paint, asking questions she used to think beneath her. Should we lower this light? Is orange too loud for the reading corner? One night she sat on a rolled-up carpet beside Malik, sweat on her brow. I don't recognize myself, she said quietly. He smiled. That's not a bad thing. She looked around the room. I used to think love was performance. Straight A's, PowerPoint decks. Now this little girl barely says 10 words a day, and she's taught me more than any boardroom ever did. Malik didn't respond. He didn't need to. Do you think this center will be enough? She asked. No, he said honestly. Nothing ever is. That's the secret. But if we pour love into it without needing applause, it becomes something more than a place. It becomes belonging. Vivian smiled, then looked down. I'm scared. What if I fail again? What happens to her? Malik didn't hesitate. Then we fall with her. But we fall together. That's the difference now. Opening day came under gold-streaked skies. The front sign gleamed under filtered sunlight. The listening room below it, a plaque read, "No titles, no tests, just time, just trust." Families lined up hesitantly. At first some with wide-eyed children clutching stuffed animals, others holding their kids close like shields. But once inside, the atmosphere changed. There were no questionnaires at the door, no diagnosis required, just a soft voice asking, "What color makes you feel calm?" Lucas moved like the space was a second skin. He knelt beside a boy who tapped the floor rhythmically and said, "Let's turn that beat into a painting." The boy lit up. Becca led a group of kids in tracing bubble patterns on the window. Amaya read a story about quiet superheroes. Vivian stood back, tears in her eyes, her hands at her sides, unsure where to place them, until Alina reached back unprompted and grabbed her fingers. Eva, dressed in blue and yellow, and orange, floated between stations like a quiet breeze. She hummed softly as she moved, no longer out of habit, but out of joy. A news crew arrived, cameras rolling. A reporter stepped forward. "Miss Hopewell, are you ready for your interview?" Vivian shook her head. "No interviews today." "But it's your grand opening," he insisted. "I know," she said. "That's why the focus should be on them, not me." She turned back into the room, stepping beside Malik as he folded paper stars with Alina and Amaya. "You stunned the press," he whispered. "I'm learning to let silence speak," she replied. Amaya grinned. She used to talk in PowerPoints. Now she talks in hugs. Malik laughed. "That's growth." Alina gently placed a folded paper star in his palm. "For blue," she said. He blinked back emotion. "I'll keep it forever." Amaya handed over another. "Mine's for yellow, for hope." Vivian knelt, folding her own. "Mine's red, for bravery, like hers." Alina collected all three, set them side by side, and smiled. Family. No one spoke for a moment, not from awkwardness, but reverence. Then a soft bell rang. It was time. Outside, the ribbon waited at the entrance, stretched in every color they'd ever used. Alina and Amaya stood with scissors in hand. But before they cut it, Alina turned to the gathered crowd, her voice clear, her chin high. "My name is Alina," she said. "I like colors. I like stars. And this place is for anyone who ever felt like a puzzle piece in the wrong box." Silence held for one perfect beat. Then the applause came, wild, tearful, true. The ribbon fell, and the listening room officially opened. Not as a facility, but as a movement. The ribbon had barely touched the ground before it was clear this was no ordinary launch. Families wept, children clapped, teachers stood in quiet awe. But most of all, something intangible settled over the listening room that afternoon, a kind of sacred trust. One not granted by licensing boards or media coverage, but by the quiet nod of every parent whose child had finally exhaled. The building didn't just open, it breathed. That night, the four of them, Vivian, Malik, Alina, and Amaya, ate dinner on the rooftop of the old warehouse. Nothing fancy. Pizza, sodas, mismatched paper plates. The city lights shimmered below them like scattered fireflies. "Do you think we'll always live near here?" Amaya asked, her voice sleepy, but certain. Vivian looked out toward the horizon. "I think we'll always belong here." Alina leaned her head on Malik's arm. "Home," she whispered. But just as the warmth of that moment threatened to wrap around them fully, the world reminded them that joy, when real, always threatens those who profit from control. The next morning, a photo began circulating online. It showed the rooftop, blurry, unposed. Vivian barefoot in jeans laughing. Malik beside her sleeves rolled his hand, gently brushing hers. In the background, a child's mural, blue, yellow, red, with 3 stick figures and a paper star. Across the image, a headline in bold. "From boardroom to bubbles. Has Hopewell's CEO fallen for her janitor?" By 8:03 a.m., it had gone viral. By 8:15, Malik's phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. "Don't speak to the press. I'll handle this." But when she arrived at the listening room, her face told a different story. Lips, tight eyes, bloodshot phone glued to her palm. "They're calling for my resignation," she said. Malik set down the breakfast tray he'd been preparing for the morning session. "Who the board?" "Half of them." "And Greg," she said, barely holding herself together. "He says I've compromised our brand. That I've blurred lines. That I've—" Her voice broke off. Malik exhaled slowly. "And what do you think?" Vivian looked up at him. "I think I'm tired of being a brand." They stood in the hallway of the center, surrounded by drawings taped to the walls. Scribbles, stars, bubble maps, crayon rainstorms. None of it corporate. All of it real. "I can resign," she whispered, gracefully. "We protect the foundation. We protect you." "No," Malik said, his voice deeper now. "You've seen what this place means. You've seen what she becomes here. You want to walk away to protect it? I get it. But don't lie and call it noble. This place wasn't built on image. It was built on presence." She clenched her fists. "I don't want Alina to become a headline." Malik softened. "Then remind the world she's a child. Not a scandal." A pause. Then quietly he asked, "Would it help if I stepped back?" Vivian turned to him, fast and fiery. "Don't you dare." He blinked. She stepped closer. "I don't care what the press says. I don't care what Greg says. I care what she says. And she says your name like it means safe. I won't take that from her. Not again." Malik's voice lowered. "Then we face this together." But outside, the storm had already arrived. By noon, protesters stood on the sidewalk, some holding handmade signs that read, "Janitor's Agenda" and "Hopewell betrayed us." Others rallied in support, shouting, "Blue means safe." The media crowded every entrance. Microphones, cameras, drones. Inside the boardroom, the temperature was worse. Greg stood at the head of the long glass table, pacing like a general on a sinking ship. "We gave you every opportunity to fix this," he said. "But instead, you doubled down on the drama." Vivian sat at the far end, silent. Greg continued. "Donors are pulling. Stocks down 7%. Shareholders want blood. This center. It's no longer a passion project. It's a circus." Malik stood near the back, arms crossed. He didn't speak. Not yet. Greg turned to the board. "This man, this janitor, is not qualified. He may be poetic. He may be sincere. But he's not a clinician, not a doctor. He's a liability. He's endangering our brand, our balance sheet, and your reputations." The room buzzed with tension. Vivian stood slowly. "I resign." Gasps. Greg smirked. Smart move. But she wasn't finished. "I resign from you," she said. "Not from this." She looked each board member in the eye. "I've negotiated billion-dollar contracts. I've sat on international panels. But nothing has made me prouder than watching my daughter say hope in yellow crayon." Her voice cracked, but she didn't look away. "I was wrong about what leadership meant. But I'm not wrong about this place." She turned to Malik. "And I'm not walking away from the man who reminded me that love doesn't ask for permission." Then she walked out. Minutes later, Malik found her sitting behind the center on the loading dock steps, head in her hands, the wind tugging at her hair. "You sure about that exit?" he asked gently. "No," she said. "But I'm sure about you." He sat beside her. "That might be the bravest thing anyone's ever said to me," he murmured. She smiled through a tear. "You know what scares me most? What, that I didn't fall in love with you. I grew into it." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Good. That means it's strong." Vivian looked up. "If we lose everything, funding, support, media coverage, what do we do?" Malik reached into his back pocket, unfolded a crumpled drawing. It was one of Alina's 3 stick figures under a rainbow sky. The words, "Don't go. Stay blue." He handed it to her. "That's what we do. We stay." Vivian clutched the drawing to her chest. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like breaking. She felt like fighting.